Welcome to the Algebra 1, Chapter 9 Quiz Number 1 Review, Answer Key Video Explanation. So as we go through these, I'm going to point out a few of the different rules, and also I will attach an extra resource with this lesson, or with this video I should say, just providing you with a list of common perfect squares. Because what you want to keep in mind is anytime we are trying to simplify inside of a radical, we want to try to factor out perfect squares. So going through the review, we'll start with just the top row, 1, 2, and 3. Remember, if it's a square root of a number, our possible answers would be a positive or negative. So the square root of 49 is positive 7 times positive 7, or negative 7 times negative 7. So it's a positive or negative 7. In 2, if the negative is outside the square root, we just apply that negative at the end. So square root of 36 is 6, so we'd write it as a negative 6. And in 3, if there's a negative inside the radical, we cannot have that when we do the square root. We'd get an error in the calculator, which tells us there is no real number for the solution. Now our next row, 4, 5, and 6, we're simplifying our radicals as far as possible. So 27, the square root of 27 can be simplified when we factor out the perfect square 9, because 9 times 3 is 27. So the square root of 27 is the same as square root of 9 times square root of 3. Square root of 9 is 3, so our final answer would simply be 3 square roots of 3. In 5, we have the negative out in front, so we're not going to worry about that right now. I want to simplify the square root of 125. 125 is 5 times 25, so our simplified answer is a negative times the square root of 5 times square root of 25, and the square root of 25 is 5. So our final answer would be negative 5 square root of 5. And then in 6, we have 5 square roots of 12, so 5 multiplied by the square root of 12. We want to simplify the square root of 12 to square root of 4 times square root of 3. Square root of 4 is 2, so 5 times 2 is 10, so our final answer would be 10 square root of 3. In 7, we have the square root of 3 times the square root of 12. So we could multiply them first and then factor, or we could check to factor individually. Well, the square root of 12 is the same as square root of 4 times square root of 3, and the square root of 4 is 2. So I'd have 2 multiplied by that original square root of 3, and the square root of 3 from the 12. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just 3, so 2 times 3 would give us our final answer is 6. In 8, square root of 6 multiplied by square root of 15. If I take 6 times 15, I get 90. So this is the same thing as the square root of 90. Square root of 90 can be simplified to the square root of 9 times square root of 10. And the square root of 9 is 3. So our answer would be 3 square root of 10. And then in 9, we have 4 square roots of 5 multiplied by 2 square roots of 10. So I'm going to multiply the numbers out in front. 4 times 2 is 8. And then multiply the radicals. So square root of 5 times square root of 10 is square root of 50. Square root of 50 simplifies to square root of 25 times square root of 2. And the square root of 25 is 5. So we have 8 times 5 times the square root of 2, which gives us 40 square root of 2. Now on to number 10. We have the square root of 48 over 75. So we can separate the top and bottom, so it's the square root of 48 over the square root of 75. On top, we can take out the perfect square 16, So square root of 48 is the same as square root of 3 times square root of 16. And on bottom, square root of 75 is square root of 3 times square root of 25. The square root of 3 on top and bottom would cancel. The square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 25 is 5. So our final answer is 4 over 5, or 4/5. In 11, we want to separate. So we'd have the square root of 5 over square root of 16. Square root of 5 cannot be simplified, but the square root of 16 on bottom simplifies to 4. So our answer would be square root of 5 over 4. What you want to remember is it's okay to have a radical on top, but we can't have one in the denominator of our final answer. So in 12, 5 over the square root of 3, just like I said, we cannot have a radical in the final answer on bottom. So the way we get rid of that is we multiply the top and bottom by the square root of 3. So on bottom, square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just 3. And on top, we'd have 5 square roots of 3. So our final answer, 5 square root of 3 over 3. 13, square root of 4 over square root of 13. Again, we don't want a radical on bottom, so we're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 13. Square root of 4 simply is 2. So on top, we have 2 times the square root of 13 over the square root of 13 times square root of 13 is just 13. In 14, 30 over the square root of 18. So on bottom, square root of 18 is the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. Square root of 9 is 3, so this is the same thing as 30 over 3 square roots of 2. So I want to get rid of the radical on bottom, square root of 2, so we're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2. Well, 30 divided by 3 is 10, so we know the top instead of 30 will be 10. So it's 10 times the square root of 2 over square root of 2 times square root of 2 on bottom is just 2. So then we have 10 square roots of 2 over 2, which we can simplify. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So we'd have 5 square roots of 2 for our final answer. Then in 15, we have square root of 6 over 3 square roots of 2. So again, right away, I want to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2. Get rid of the radical on bottom. So on top, square root of 6 times square root of 2 is square root of 12. And on bottom, square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2. So 2 times 3 is 6. So we have square root of 12 over 6. We can simplify the square root of 12 on top to square root of 4 times square root of 3, which would be 2 square roots of 3 over 6. And we can simplify the 2 and 6 to a 1 and a 3. So we would just have square root of 3 over 3. Now to our final three, 16, 17, and 18. So what we want to keep in mind is if they have the same radical part, for example, in 16, each share the square root of 2, then we can combine the different terms. So the square root of 2 is just going to be there. 9 square roots of 2 minus 3 square roots of 2. 9 minus 3 is 6. So that's the same as 6 square roots of 2. And then it's still plus that square root of 2. So square root of 2 plus 6 square roots of 2 would give us 7 square roots of 2. In 17, we have square root of 72 minus square root of 18. So when I factor out my perfect squares of both, square root of 72 is the same as square root of 36 times square root of 2, which is 6 square roots of 2. Square root of 18 is square root of 9 times square root of 2. Square root of 9 is 3, so that's 3 square roots of 2. So this is 6 square roots of 2 minus 3 square roots of 2. 6 minus 3 is 3, so our final answer would be 3 square roots of 2. Because they share the square root of 2, we can combine them. And then in 18, 3 square root of 24 minus 2 square roots of 96 plus 5 square roots of 6. So what I want to do is treat each one of these terms separately and see if I can simplify. So 3 times the square root of 24 is 3 times square root of 4 times square root of 6, or 3 times 2 times square root of 6, which is 6 square roots of 6. Then I want to simplify my middle term. So the negative or the minus stays out in front. 2 square roots of 96. Square root of 96 is square root of 16 times square root of 6. And the square root of 16 is 4. So we have 2 times 4 times square root of 6, which would give us 8 square roots of 6. And we bring down that subtraction sign from the original problem. And then at the end, we just have our 5 square roots of 6 that we bring down for the addition. So then we look at it, they all share the square root of 6, so we can combine them. 6 square roots of 6 plus 5 square roots of 6 is 11 square roots of 6. 11 square root of 6 minus the 8 square roots of 6. 11 minus 8 would give us a 3 in front. So our final answer is 3 square root of 6. So after you've gone through the video and made changes to your review, please let me know if you have any questions to go over or you need any extra examples before our quiz.